Hello and welcome to this exploring session, and today we are looking at a play called Christ's Burial, found in the as part of the Digby manuscript, one of the Digby plays. It is a play dated to potentially somewhere around 1520. The suggestion that it's from somewhere up north. And that it may be an interesting offshoot of liturgical drama rather than some of the other offshoots of drama that have occurred over time. I don't know precisely about that. We shall see as we go. The way the play has been written out is sometimes a bit confused, as the person actually doing the writing occasionally seems to write it out as though it's more a book with he said and then such and such, rather than actually putting out in dialogue terms. So there are always those little questions about precisely how this text functions. There are bits cut or excised in the manuscript as well, occasional bits that may or may not appear in our reading, which I'll flag up as we go, or I will attempt to. Also, this is a text I had great difficulty getting a nice good copy of, so there may be a greater incidence of typos in this particular one than we are used to. Of course, all the regulars are used to my occasional random party quirks and errors. General trigger warning, this is not a desperately cheerful play because it is about a burial. So be aware that there is a religious figure on stage throughout. It is also, more importantly, has a trigger warning because this is a early modern representation of the crucifixion of Jesus, and therefore there is some anti-Semitism may creep into some of the dialogue, and so just flagging that up. That is not obviously something that we affirm. We just will mark and move forward. To go through this particular text today, we have this crack team of readers who will examine how this play functions. So, reading today, the part of Nicodemus as well as the prologue will be.
Hi, I'm Alan Scott, based in Suffolk. I'm neither an actor nor an academic.
And reading Magdalen, or as we'll be saying throughout most of the text, Maudlyn, or otherwise occasionally known as First Mary, is.
Hello, my name is Sascha Cooper, and I'm a professional performer based in Brighton in the UK.
And reading Mary number 2, and or other Mary number 3, and or all of the Marys simultaneously or one at a time will be.
It is me.
Yes.
Okay, off to a great start. I'm George Andrews, a professional actor based in London.
Yes, we've been getting a little confused as to which Mary is which because there are quite a few Marys. Mary number 3, and also reading the Virgin Mary is.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm an actor, writer and director based in Germany.
Taking on the part today of John the Evangelist is. Muted at moment.
Liza Graham, actor, singer and Shakespearean text coach to actors in London.
And finally, reading the part of Joseph is.
I am Steve Longstaffe, an unprofessional actor and scholar of early modern drama based in Lancaster in the UK.
And I'm your host, Robert Crichton. I will be filling in where things go horribly wrong. So without further ado, let us dive into this text and see what comes out of it. So manuscript starts with helpful note of telling us that this is the prologue of this Trinity or meditation of the burial of Christ and mourning thereat.
A soul that lists to sing of love, of Christ that come to us so low, read this treaty, it may him move, and may him teach lightly with awe, of the sorrow of Mary somewhat to know, upon Good Friday afternoon, also of the apostles' awe, and how Maudlyn's sorrows cease it not soon, and also how Joseph Aramathia and other persons holy, with Nicodemus worthily, how in their heart had woe. First let us mind how good Joseph on this wise wept Christ's death.
Alas, that ever I lived thus long, this day to see so great wrong. So fell cruelty and pains strong were never seen ere this. Such envy, such rancour, such malice of cruel torments, such excess. Oh, Pilate, Pilate, in thy palace, he that never did amiss this day was damned. O innocent blood, most of virtue, most gracious and good, this day streamed out like a flood, and like a river great on Calvary Mount on length and breadth. O Calvary, thy green colour is turned to red by a blessed lamb's blood which now is dead. Alas, for faint I sweet, remembering that so clean and innocent should die, which led his life the most perfectly and wrought such works run wondrously as Judea can record. What mortal creature that power might have to make a dead man rise out of his grave, lying therein 4 days tave, but God, the greatest Lord, a man to have his sight, born stark blind from Adam's creation, where shall we find? Or what prophets can ye call to mind, of whom may be verified so great a miracle above nature's right? To many other blind men I give thee sight, and wrought many wonders by godly might, as is well certified. From the hill I come, but now down, where I left the holy women in deadly swoon. O ye people of this city and of this town, heard ye not the exclamation and the great brunt which was on the hill? Crucify him, slow him and kill. Peace. Now, hearken, pray you stand still. You think I hear lamentation.
And we're just going to briefly pause there. It's a really strong opening from Joseph. I really like that. Obviously, I should have changed sweet to sweat, I suppose. That should have happened. Apologies there. It's interesting. The prologue seems to be more a literary prologue. It talks about reading. I wonder about that. I don't know whether that's an expectation, but we're about to hit an interesting bit in the text, which is a bit tricksy because some of it's contradictory. So we have here, as indicated by Joseph's dialogue, off the weeping of the three Marys. Then there's an additional bit of instruction about how it might be performed. This is a play to be played part on Good Friday afternoon and the other part upon Easter Day after the resurrection in the morrow. But at the beginning are certain lines which should not be said if it be played, and the rest is lost from there. So it comes with instructions for performance that I haven't got there. It also has some lines cut. Struck through is a man. Hearken how Maudlyn with the Marys three weeps and wrings their hands as they go. Now that could be that's additionally part of Joseph's line, or whether that there is an extra supernumerary who's standing there saying there's someone coming on there. There's lots of questions that I quite like about this. Any thoughts from the room? Yes, Liza.
Just as a guess, I've noticed as I've scrolled a little bit ahead that there are some other stage directions that rhyme, and it's possible that the same person who spoke the prologue may be functioning as a sort of narrator, which I'm sure could be cut for some performances. I suppose depending on whether it was being done liturgically or not.
Yeah. I mean, the bit that I haven't given you in your script, where I just read, suggests that there is some flex and give and take about how these things can be performed, depending on the context in which you're performing it. It mentions there is a part 2, by the way, so there is another play we'll do another time. So it comes as a set.
Do we have the other play?
Yes. Oh, yes. It might take me a while to finish it.
Three Marys, Too Fast and Furious.
Jesus, this time it's personal. Any additional thoughts about that opening?
Could I just say something about that speech? I was just like emoting and emoting, and then all of a sudden it goes, oh, I wonder what might happen later. And it's that kind of strange thing you come across with anything biblical in the early modern period, which is, what is to come is foreshadowed somewhere else. And it's kind of doing that on you. It sort of does this sort of, judo move on you. And you can't actually emote. I found myself looking at those going, I shouldn't be saying this like this, should I? Because he's not upset about this, is he? And then it just flips you back over again and back into the moment. So it's that sort of weird. Obviously, I guess, it's just because I haven't read it and was decided to emote. But it's that strange thing about this sort of late medieval, early modern stuff, isn't it? That it can give you sort of full-on Stanislavski friendly stuff, but it reserves the right to pull the rug from under that if there's something more important that needs to happen.
It reminds me of sort of that a bit of, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, so I'm going to preface it that way, but it reminds me a bit of what happens with McGonagall. And I don't mean it that way. What I mean it there is that McGonagall can really get into, look at something like Toadbridge Disaster. There's a sort of actual power to bits of it. And then every so often he'll just do a massive gear change where he'll just deliver exposition. There's been this terrible disaster, terrible things happen. If they just erected proper steel girders and done it in a different configuration, nobody would have died. And then back to plaintive. And it's sort of that gear change here that I think has a sort of, I think it comes from the same sort of thing about wanting to inform as well as emote and trying to do the two jobs simultaneously. I thought it emoted well.
You read it beautifully.
Yeah.
Thank you. But it kind of makes it a challenge for any modern performance, doesn't it? Because we can relate to the emoji stuff, but it's more difficult because you really kind of need to be the original audience for the other stuff to work in the same way, in a sense.
Yeah.
Even a contemporary Christian audience wouldn't. Well, I don't know. Actually, maybe they would, but perhaps they wouldn't be informed in the same way by the informative stuff. It might not land in the. I don't know. It might. I mean, I don't know anything about contemporary Christians and how they take things, but
it's interesting because it's partly also a doctrinal problem because when we say Christians, there are so many different variations now, whereas then there was just one Christianity. So reception is very much dependent on which denomination as well.
Well, there was one official Christianity. It had there were variations.
Oh yes.
Look, the only other note I have is you were saying Robert or you prepared the text, right? Robert or
I have prepared this, yes, as best I could.
So and you left a note that sometimes a final ed syllable would be spelled it, like bless it.
Yes, and that was fairly consistent throughout, and I sort of made that decision. Which I sort of regretted, but also didn't.
The thing about changing it back to ed is that in modern English, ed isn't its own syllable often, and the verse. I think the character of the verse might be changed if we had those extra final syllables.
Yeah, I quite agree. It was a compromise that I just I decided to do.
I wonder how much of that is because the original copy came from somewhere in the north, just thinking of like not having standardized spelling, the way I would naturally, or my family would naturally say blessed, like it might have a bit of a soft, I don't know, like it's how much of it is that kind of orthography, because I don't know much about original spelling.
It's a little more complicated because though the play they think comes from the north, it may have been copied in the east.
Although Georgia, that does make sense because in Scots, of course, you get it as ed quite a lot. So to make that makes sense to me anyway.
Yeah.
I thought Alan read Cease really, really well, though. You know, that really flowed very nicely in the prologue.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean that felt comfortable actually. That piece, and some of the prologues I've had experience of in this forum in the past, I've been so completely flummoxed by, but that one did flow and works, I think, as a good exposition.
And it's not quite as ye olde Game of Thronesy as Cease, but it sort of signals an interesting difference.
I thought we might get away without that program.
Well, it's
oh my God! If it's a duck for Shakespeare, what's he going to do for Game of Thrones?
Chop off your heads. I mean, it's interesting. It's because that question of how the prologue functions and what it, is it for a performance, or is that just simply to go in this to open the manuscript for anyone reading it? And that question of what this text is doing, and therefore what do we do with it as a performance thing?
Rob, is this a similar sort of source to the Antown plays, which we looked at on the podcast?
Yes and no. I mean, it's the same kind of time when these things are being copied and being put into various manuscripts, but it's not quite the same process.
There is a York Mary's play, isn't there? I think I was involved with one in York, which I assumed was a York play. 25 years ago, we did something on pageant wagons, and Three Marys. We did the Resurrection, but we also did the Three Marys as a kind of twofer.
I would not be surprised. Off the top of my head, I don't know, but I can have a quick look while we do the next bit. I think we should move forward because we haven't actually done that much text. And I said, "Oh, we've got plenty of time," and suddenly we've just done Joseph opening oration. So anyway, enter Three Marys, and the Three Marys are all going to say together in one voice. This is going to wreak havoc with Zoom. So Three Marys say all together in a voice.
Oh, most dolorous day! Oh, time of greatest sorrow!
Sisters, stand still until tomorrow. I trow I may not leave.
I hear thee, Maudlyn, bitterly complain. What good creature may himself refrain in this piteous mischief?
Oh, is
yeah.
that?
I'm assuming it is. I deliberately didn't change it because I don't know.
Okay. Oh, day of lamentation.
Oh, day of exclamation.
Oh, day of suspiration, which Jews shall repent.
Oh, day most dolorous.
Oh, day painful and tedious.
Oh, people most cruel and furious, thus to slew an innocent.
Oh, Maudlyn, your master dear, how ruefully he hangs here, that set you first in jail.
Ah, cease, sisters, it slows my cheer. His dutiful death I may not bear. Devout Joseph, I see him here, our cares for to cool. Oh, good Joseph, approach to us near, behold him wounded with a spear, that loved you so well.
Oh, Maudlyn, I pray you hear, and your sisters also, be of good cheer.
Oh, friend Joseph, this prince had never peer. The well of mercy that made me clear, and that wist ye will. Nay, good Joseph, come near and behold. This bloody lamb's body is stark and cold. Oh, had ye seen his pains many-fold, ye would have been right sorry. Joseph, look better. Behold and see, in how little space, how many wounds be. Here was no mercy, her was no pity, but cruel dealing painfully. Oh, good Joseph, I am all dismayed to see his tender flesh thus ruefully arrayed, on this wise so woefully displayed, wounded with nail and spear. Oh, dear Joseph, I feel my heart wax cold, these blessed feet thus bloody to behold. whom I washed with tears manyfold, and wiped with my hair. Oh, how rueful a spectacle it is! Never hast be seen, ne shall be after this, such cruel rigour to the King of bliss, the Lord that made all, thus to suffer in his humanity, and that only for our iniquity. O Maker of man, what love and pity hadst thou for us so thrall? O good Joseph, was ye not present here?
Yes, Mother Maudlyn. Changed me cheer. Wonder was so great I irked to come near, but I was not far hence.
Oh, Joseph, if I told you every circumstance of the most merit and perseverance of him that never did offence, this high king that hangs before our face, displayed on cross in this piteous place, and tell you of his patience, friend Joseph, this day I am sure, scantly with force ye might it endure, but your heart should tender how he suffered to be taked, sore scourged and naked on all his body slender, and notwithstanding your manly heart from your eyes the tears would start to shew your heaviness. Come hither, Joseph, and stand near this rood. Lo, this lamb spared not to shed his blood with most painful distress. Here was more rancour shewed than equity, much more malice than any pity. I report me, behold and see yourself, his pain passes all others, as if he were the Prince of Peace. Therefore my sorrow has no release.
Good Maudlyn, of your mourning cease. It ekes my dole, dear mother.
Good friend Joseph, what creature may but sorrow to see this woeful day, the day of greatest pain?
Woe and sorrow must needs sink more in our hearts than meat and drink, to see our Saviour slain.
Alas, women, you make my heart to relent. Beholding his body torn thus and rent, inwardly I weep. Good Maudlyn, show unto me, where is Mary, his mother so free? Who haves that maid to keep?
Joseph, from this place is she gone. To have seen her, a heart of stone, for Ruth would have relent. Right many times among us here she swoons with most deadly cheer, as mother meekest kent. With furlong prayer scant we might cause her part from this piteous sight. She made many complaint. Ye never saw woman as wise dismayed. Zebedus and John has her conveyed. To speak of her, I faint. Many men speaks of lamentation of mothers, and of their great desolation, which what they did endure when that their childer die and pass. But of his piteous tender mother, alas, I am very sure the woe and pain passes all other. Was there never so sorrowful a mother for inward thought and care and cure, where she heard him for his enemies pray, and promised the thief the blesses eye, and to herself no word would say, she sighed, ye be sure. The son hung, and the mother stood, and ever she kissed the drops of blood that so fast ran down. She extended her arms him to brace. She might not touch him, so high was the place, and then she fell in swoon.
Good Maudlyn, who can her blame to see her own son in so great shame, without any offence? Maudlyn, had he any mind on her in his passion?
Yea, yea, Joseph, of her he had great compassion, as apparent by evidence. For hanging on the cross most pitifully, he looked on that maid, his mother, ruefully, and said with a tender countenance, as who say, Mother, the sorrow of your heart makes my passion more bitter and more smart. Ye been ever in my remembrance. Dear mother, because I depart as now. John, my cousin, shall wait on you, your comfort for to be. Lo, he had her on his gracious mind to teach all children to be kind to father and mother of duty. This child would not leave his mother alone, notwithstanding her lamentable moan and heaviness.
Oh, good lady, full woe was she. But can ye tell what words said he there in that great distress?
Oh, Joseph, this lay most meek in his cruel torments and painful eke. But few words he had, save that in great agony he said these words, I am thirsty, with cheer demure and sad.
Maudlyn, suppose ye his desire was to drink?
Nay, verily, friend Joseph, I think he thirsted no liquor. His thirst was of charity. For our faith and fidelity he pondery the rigour of his passion done so cruelly. For the health of man's soul chiefly he thirsted and desired. And then, after torment long, and after pains fell and strong, meekest lamb expired. For wicked sinners this lamb is dead. Alas, my heart waxed heavy as lead, finding my wretchedness. Where was ever a more sinful creature than I myself? Nay, nay, I am sure was none of more offences. Oh, what displeasure is in my mind, remembering that I was so unkind to him that hangs here so piteously, my sins done outrageously. Mercy, Lord, I require, notwithstanding the great enormity of my foul sins, and of his humility, this lamb, this innocent, for my contrition, he forgave me, only of his free merciful pity. Needs must my heart relent. This is the sacrifice of remission, Christ. All sinners, having contrition, calleth to mercy and grace, saying these words, these sweet words. Return to me. Leave thy sin, and I shall be with thee, accept in every place. Had not been his most merciful consolation, I, wretch of all wretches, into desperation had fallen right dangerously. Oh, my deeds were damnable of right, but his mercy accept my heart contrite, and reconciled me graciously. O meekest lamb hanging here on high, was there none other mean but thou must needs die sinners to reconcile? Sisters, sisters, what sorrow is in me, beholding my master on this piteous tree. My heart faints, I may nae longer dream. No, let me pause a while.
And in
Where
fact,
shall
there
I
we will. We'll let her pause a while. I think that's an important moment. And it leads into actually what comes next. There's a great deal of excess, but it works so well. And, you know, it keeps on going. And, you know, remembering here, if, you know, the physicality of this, you know, this is in theory, the body's right there all the way through. So you know, if when we come to the we're talking about emotion and how to channel things and whether we should or whether the text is doing that, there's so much potential here. It's I one of the other more continuous adjustments in terms of occasional vowel shifting. I did deliberately change hinge to hang as it read, because I thought it would it might work perfectly well with rehearsal, but I didn't want to leave us open to it sounding a bit weird.
Hing.
Yeah.
It would. Was that a past tense? Hing.
It depends on it's always an I rather than an A. It's throughout. Right. We've got a lot of A's as well, random A's, and whether that's a R or A or what that vowel sound is, and how that's performed is always interesting. What does one do with the sort of exclamatory noises intimated? And Joseph sidestepped the interesting textual question of when Joseph suddenly goes Brechtian.
I was about to ask you about that. Yes. Do you want me not to do that in future?
I think it's the only instance actually that is still that's still very apparent. I left it in there as a trap.
Right.
So for the listeners at home, Joseph has, "O Maudlyn, said Joseph, I pray you hear," in the text. And again, it's that question of, is that the compositor writing it out, feeling the need to put that in? Is that something very interesting in the performance tradition? I don't know. That's in there.
Is it to do with speech headings then? Because it was some of the other manuscripts from the period, the speech headings get put in later, don't they?
Of course, yeah.
I'm looking at the one page of manuscript I can see in front of it. It might be. It's slightly tricky to tell.
Okay.
The speech headings tend to be sort of in this one to the right of the text. But no, it's such a powerful thing, isn't it?
Well read. Well read.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
Going back to the fact that Maudlyn says, and then you said as well, the fact that he's hanging, Christ is hanging there. I don't know anything about liturgical drama. This is my first encounter with it. Would they have actually had a person playing him? Would he have been hanging there? Would it have been done symbolically? Would it have just been a cross, or what would they have done?
Again, there's a lot of question marks in that I want to look into. But it's there. If that's the way we're thinking about it, it's indoors. It's probably in a church. You might literally have a cross with him, as part of the church architecture.
Yeah,
right. Okay.
Front of the rood screen.
Yeah.
But then they take him down off it, don't they? Which implies that you're either using an actor or a dummy, a doll of some kind.
Or they're not fully acting it out.
Possibly.
Yeah. There is a slight. There might be a distinction between what they're saying and what they're physically doing. But I don't know. I genuinely don't know. And to some degree, it's what we want to do with it as we go forward. It's that question: how far are we willing to go? Getting Christ down from a cross is easy. It's getting him up there that's the really hard bit. Speaking on a straightforward staging practicality thing, this is the easy bit.
Well, the York nailmakers have a whole play for it, don't they? I mean, it's like to me.
Yeah,
really,
I mean, all of the crucifixion plays are all about logistics.
They are. It's really funny.
Yeah, and the one thing about staging a crucifixion is you really get a great deal of respect for Roman soldiery, because it's hard work. It's ridiculously difficult, pragmatically to do.
I'm speaking liturgically. I mean, I'm trying to cast my mind back to my kind of Catholic education. That would work, actually, having miming taking Jesus down, but the cross still being there, because of the way that you're supposed to kind of meditate on a particular image. I think sort of 14-year-old me would have had no problem with that sort of strange sort of split screen thing.
It would work for us now, but I don't know if it would have worked for them then. They were used to seeing images of saints and of Jesus. I wonder if it were a town where other liturgical dramas were performed, perhaps there was someone in the town who routinely played Jesus.
Well, it's difficult because the other liturgical dramas I know are very, very early things, and they're all in Latin. and they don't really go in for literal staging. You know, they may do some approaching, saying some dialogue, singing some dialogue, moving away again. But this is so much later, and I genuinely don't know. And you know, I question whether that's the correct thought about what this is anyway. I genuinely don't know.
Did you say that you had a day that you thought it was performed on, Ron?
Oh yes, no. This manuscript explicitly gives you options. So this particular play is on part on Good Friday afternoon, and the other part, the resurrection, is upon Easter Day in the morrow.
I'll do a bit of a check if I get some time out. But I'm sure I remember as a child that there was a point in the Easter cycle where this humongous huge cross gets brought in, and you all have to go and kind of kiss the feet and stuff. So I wonder if I'll have a look. I'll do some Googling.
3 o'clock in the afternoon is what comes back to my memory.
Right.
Of sort of the start of the holy hour, effectively. And I
really
wasn't in the Catholic, relatively high.
Anyway, let's move forward with the text. Let's see what dramatic possibilities come out of it. I already have many thoughts about what I might want to do with this, but well, I'll leave those to the end. I wouldn't want to infect you with thoughts. So, Maudlyn, you have 3 lines to go, plus some stage directions, which I will read before we go forward.
Now, let me pause a while. Oh, where shall any comfort come to me, and to his mother, that made so free? Would God, here I might die!
And a crossed out stage direction, as Maudlyn thus sore did weep, the other 2 Marys took good keep and said right soberly.
Good
Maudlyn, measure your distilling tears.
Oh, sisters, who may hold their cheers? These are the sweet feet I wiped with hairs and kissed so devoutly, and now to see them thry-lined with a nail, how should my sorrowful heart but fail and mourn continually? Come hither, Joseph, behold and look. How many bloody letters have been written in this book? Small margin here it is.
Yea, this parchment is stretched out of size. Oh, dearest Lord, in how painful wise have ye followed this? All the people that passes hereby, behold here inwardly, with your eyes ghostly, consider well, and see if that ever any pain or torment were like unto this, which this innocent hath suffered thus meekly. Remember, man, remember well, and see how liberal man this Lord was, and free, which to save mankind 1 drop of blood it has not kept ne spared. For little for ease or pleasure he cared, by reason he may find, which 1 drop of blood has not reserved. O Lord, by thy death we been preserved. By death thou hast slain death, was never no love like unto thine, that to this meekness thyself would incline, and for us to yield thy breath. Thou knew there were no remedy to redeem sin, but a bath of thy blood to bathe man's soul in, and thou were well assent to let it run out most plenteously. Where were ever such love? Or never, verily, that such wise would content. To his Father for us he made a sure render. No, every bone ye may number of his body tender, for tolerable pains the tormentors spared no cruelty, with sharp scourges to tear his flesh. You may see, with thorns thrust into his brains, great nails driven the bones all to break. Thus in every part the nails they did rake. Oh, cruel wickedness! the crown of the head unto the toe. This blessed body was wrapped all in woe, in pain and distress. In this displayed body, where may it be found? One spot, a place, but there is a wound, either more or less. See, his side, head, hands, and feet. Lo, all his body with blood is wet. So painful was his press. On each part he is pained sore, save only the tongue, which evermore for sinners did pray.
Whoever assess or ever a spectacle more piteous, a more lamentable sight and dolorous. Oh, this woeful day! Alas, this sorrow that I endure with great inward heaviness and cure. Alas, that I do not die to see him dead. Made me of naught, if his death thus has been bought. Oh, cruel tormentry! Oh, dear master, be ye not displeased. If I might die with you, my heart were well eased. Oh, fate, fate it is.
What mean ye, woman, in God's name? Mother, too much sorrow ye make, ye be to blame. I pray you leave all this. He that hangeth here, of his humility, from death shall arise. Right so, said he. His words must need be true. This is the final cause and conclusion to bring our mortal enemy to confusion and his power to subdue. For this cause he descended from the heavenly place, born of the meekest virgin, full of grace, which now most sorrowful is. For that cause he did our nature take, thus by death to slow death for man's sake, and to restore him to bliss. Wherefore, good women, yourself comfort. Once to again he shall resort, I trust, verily. I pray you complain not thus heavily.
Needs must I complain, and that most bitterly. And I shall tell you why. Insensible creatures being troubled, ye see. The sun had lost his sight, eclipsed was he. The earth trembled fearfully, the hard flint and stone is broken in sunder. If reasonable creatures be troubled, it is no wonder. And among all, specially, I, a wretched woman, a wretch, behold these bloody wells. Here may thou fetch balm more precious than gold. O ye walls of mercy, digged so deep, who may refrain, who may but weep, these bloody streams to behold. Oh, fountains flowing with water of life, to wash away corruption of wounds infected, the deadly sea grievous. All with meekness is measured this ground, without doubt, wherein so many springs of mercy flows out. Behold, how so plenteous!
Maudlyn, your mourning avails nothing. Let us speak to Joseph, him heartily desiring for to find some good way this crucified body down to take, and bring it to sepulchre, and so let make end of this woeful day.
You shall understand yet more. I have been with the judge, Pilate, instantly for this same request, to bury this most holy body, and he granted me, full tenderly, to do as me thought best. Spoken with Nicodemus also. He tarries so long, I marvel. I see him now, come up with the hill. Cease of your weeping, I pray you, be still. I trust all shall be well. Nicodemus, come near. I have longed for your thought.
And we'll just pause as Nicodemus enters. And here we get that really interesting question, which is a question to ask about performance of Joseph, is how, when he talks about what kind of grief is acceptable? At what point are you supposed to stop? And how aggressive should Joseph be at that point? And also, as we're going to go through the text going ahead, I don't want to talk about what we haven't done yet. That question is really, what is the tone of that? Because it creates a whole series of possibilities about this and what is being said. It's really interesting. Thoughts on the room? I mean, again, beautifully done. It's one of the reasons for being able to. It's good that we can stop and start, because it doesn't relent. This, it just does not stop. It really is, and where we're talking about emotion earlier. I mean, it seems to be that's the whole function of this, is actually for an emotional response in quite a visceral way, I think. Disagree with me if you wish. Maybe not necessarily in the performer, but certainly perhaps in the audience.
Well, it's visceral, and sorry, you guys, I'm talking a lot, but it's visceral. But there are also segments where we go intensely metaphorical, in a way that was common with philosophy and poetry at the time, like. When Maudlyn describes Christ's blood as a healing balm, and you get the sort of, the bits that to a modern ear sound a bit like torture porn, but that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to bathe in the blood of Christ to be redeemed. To a medieval mind, it was both metaphorical and kind of literal. There was an actual body here that was bleeding. One metaphor that really pinged out at me that I wanted to flag up was the book metaphor, where yes, I think it's Joseph that says, how many letters be written in this book? Small margin was here, and then they're like, well, this parchment was stretched out of measure, and we don't know, Robert, do we, who wrote this, whether it was someone in holy orders, whether it might have been a monk, but
no, continue. I may have data I can give you.
Great. Again, to my modern eyes, that metaphor was a bit of a record scratch moment. It's like, yes, the margins are very small, as in there aren't very many places unwounded, and the parchment was stretched, like his body is the parchment, but then parchment is also literally skin. So, and if you stretch it too much, then rents open up in it. Like that, people would have known that, or people who did a lot of writing would have known that.
So it's part in the manuscript. It's also part and parcel with a chronicle written by a Carthusian house. So it's probably southern Yorkshire, and possibly leaping on Kingston on Hull as a general location. What specific house is, I think, a little more up for grabs, but there are suggestions available.
It may be a question for Helen when she's in touch.
Yeah. So if it was a monk, I mean, copying books was something monks routinely, certain monks routinely did.
Or at least for another 13 years.
Wait, I may be wrong. I see that Stephen is looking dubious, and I do cede if you're, yeah.
No, all I was going to say was this is, it sort of talks back to Rob's logistics point. There is a bit of the sort of, the old bloke in his overalls going, oh yeah, that parchment's wrecked, you're right. Yeah, shouldn't do that with parchment. Oh no, you won't fettle that again. It's kind of like that. I read it, and there's tons of that in the mysteries, which are very matter of fact. You have, I can't remember if it was the nail makers, but you get the butchers doing a play, that kind of thing.
It's
And
interesting. I was just having a quick flick through some of the other the cycles. I mean, they do touch upon the various presences at the burial is usually a Nicodemus and Joseph affair. Mary's usually moved out, relatively quickly, and the Mary Magdalene and the three Mary stuff is usually for the resurrection. So this seems slightly unusual in the way it's formed. Certainly this sequence that we've got here. But that's just having a quick flick through.
to come back to the earlier, sorry.
Alan.
Yeah, just a quick thought. I mean, the Magdalen role is one hell of a role to do, and I just wonder how the heck they would have staged it with presumably boy actors.
Well, it could have just been any of the, if it's liturgical, it could be any one of the congregation or of the house, or they might not have learnt it. It could be book read, hence making the references to book things sort of weirdly appropriate.
But it just struck me that it requires a degree of emotional attack, as it were, which would be probably a little difficult to find if you were talking about younger boys.
Well, there's no guarantee it was performed by boys. I think you've got to not go with the later Playhouse idea. There's no inherent reason why in your locality, if all your performers are known to you, that anyone cannot play anything. It's a different thing about a professional actor going on tour issue and later Protestant issues. Some of the early liturgical material is entirely performed by women, singing nuns and things. So there's no absolute guarantee that the performers are literally the same or follow that convention. There may be some pushback on that, but don't assume that a later convention is necessarily part of the conception of this.
And similarly, actually, going back to the parchment, I've often wondered if the reason these particular mid 1500s texts are so much more metaphysical than what we as modern people understand is maybe because life was so much more everyone was pretty much in the trades, but also even as they handle a book, if they're reading from a book, they know where it comes from. There's less of a detachment of, I don't know if that's a really kind of simplistic way of thinking. There's less of a detachment from language as a physical, visceral thing and work and embodiment. I think it's a modern thing that philosophy has been separated from the physical.
Well, thinking about reading is it's a thing that most people will be doing out loud. You're not necessarily sitting reading a book in your head. You may be mumbling it along with you. And in some pieces, it was considered a supernatural skill to be able to read in your head. Sarah.
I'm sorry, I'm changing the subject entirely, but to go back to what you said right at the beginning of this discussion about the how much aggression Joseph should put into that speech. I thought Stephen did that really well. I really enjoyed the change. And I don't know how it was done originally, but I think with a modern staging, you'd want as much of that as possible, I think, because it is so emotional. There is so much grief, but grief is expressed in different ways, and grief grabs you in different ways at different times. And so I think, that I just loved that, the way Joseph suddenly became angry, because it was like her emotion was almost too much for him to bear because it was bringing up his own emotions. So I think, you'd want to look for changes in the text where you could get those moments of different, pity and wailing and anger and, all the different stages you'd want to pack into there, just also to give the audience something to like lift them occasionally as well.
And it's the other two Marys are clearly mourning and have similar thoughts, but express it in a slightly different way as well. There's a question of what is the correct way to grieve, Stephen.
Yeah, well, I was kind of going to say that, but I'll try and build on what Sarah's said, which is, I think there's maybe a clue or two before that if you wanted to pursue that in performance, because he says something. I'm not going to bother to look it up, but he says at the end of one of Mary's speeches, he says, "Yes, well, that upset my chair." Oh, it really did. My chair was quite disturbed. And I'm kind of slipping into a bit more sort of Lancastrian as I'm saying it. Because it reminds me of the old blokes I know down the pub sort of thing, it's very much. Absolutely, I think it's definitely a way to go. Sarah's suggestion is actually, there is big grief and then there is masculine and feminine, and that's one way into it. But also the other thing is, in terms of transition, is that he kind of then whacks her with a load of scripture, as it were, and says, this may look like I just can't stand any more of this grief, because his speech could have been Mary. His previous speech could have been Mary's speech. It's absolutely the same thing, I think. You could swap them, and nobody would notice. But he then it shifts gear again into, but remember, he's going to rise again, isn't he? And that's the reason I'm sort of trying to put a halt to this. Is that we have to move on another 3 days, sort of thing. So there's the difficult sort of transition from doing it just being narked is to how to go from that into because I'm not, because of scripture, because this, it's that kind of double consciousness again. He's kind of which is inherent in kind of Christian responses to this terrible thing. It's a divine comedy, as it were. And it's also but I'm going to make you feel it's the most horrible thing that's ever happened as well. So it's delicate, actually. And, I just got to go click, okay, be angry, emote, and then about 4 lines after that, I'm going, wait a minute, I'm turning to a Southern Baptist here. I tell you, the scriptures tell you, you woman, you stop. You can't do it, or you miss it. You trample over the text if you do. I think.
Yeah. And I think there is an interesting question about how this text is gendered as well, and I think that we can discuss that more further on. I think we need to crack on. Nicodemus has entered. He gets now that we've got a little bit again, sort of stage direction element. It's crossed out, but it's quite useful. I think that's why I've left it. So when Nicodemus enters, when he sees Christ. So again, reminding us that he's there, all bought, hung in his blood. He kneels down with heartily heavy thought, and then says with mild mood,
"The worthy Lord, who made all things of naught, with the most bitter pain to death so bought, thy name blessed be. Oh, how beautiful sight is this, to see the Prince of everlasting bliss, to hang here on this tree, to hang here thus so piteously. O most loving Lord, thy great mercy to this has thee constrained. Why would thine own people, thine own flock, thus crucify thee and nail to a stone? Why hast thou not refrained for 40 years in wilderness? Their old fathers in their progress thou fed with angels' food and brought them into the land of permission, where they found land in every condition and all things that was good. Is this their mercy? Is this their reward? Thy kindness, thy goodness, can they regard no better but this? Notwithstanding the vesture of thy humanity, that thou were the very Son of God, they might see thy miracles most glorious.
Good brother, of your complaints cease. You renew again great heaviness now in these women here.
Nay, great comfort we may have all, for by his godly power arise he shall, and the third day appear. Once he gave me leave with him to reason, and he showed of his death, and of this treason, and of this cruelty. and how for mankind he come to die, and thus he should arise so gloriously by his mighty majesty, and with our flesh in heaven till ascend, many sweet words it pleased him to spend, thus speaking unto me, that no man to heaven might climb, but if it were by grace of him, which come down to make us free, nemo incendit in Salem, nisi quis descendiat Celio.
And here we have potentially in the wrong place, stage direction, but Joseph ready to take Christ down says.
Right, to take down this body, let us say, Brother Nicodemus, help, I you pray. One arm, I would ye had to knock out these nails, so sturdy and great. Saviour, they spared not your body to beat. They ought now to be sad.
Good Joseph, handle him tenderly.
Stand here, Nicodemus, receive him softly. Maudlyn, hold ye his feet.
Haste you, good Joseph, haste you quickly, for Mary his mother will come, fair I. Oh, that virgin most sweet.
I saw her beneath on the other side with John. I'm sure she will not abide long from this place.
I'm just going to briefly pause there, even though we haven't gone that much further forward. The question of how Nicodemus approaches, I mean, we've got that cross through stage direction of sort of with mild mood. There's sort of a plaintive cry. Why didn't you just do, why did this have to happen? Oh, it had to happen because of this element to it. And then Joseph getting really down to the nitty gritty, isn't he? He does seem to be that kind of man. And it's almost like a reverse crucifixion scene from York and some of those other mysteries plays, of actually quite brutally practical.
It's a bloke thing.
Yeah. I don't think it's Nicodemus's bloke thing.
Not emotional. Let's just do the logistics.
Job's got to be done. Let's get on with it, chaps.
Can I just say though, I don't want to get too personal here, but it's also a grief thing. Like quite often, if you're grieving somebody, you suddenly you go through phases. Grief you're not weeping and emoting the whole time. You go through phases where you suddenly become super practical, and it's like, right, yes, let's do this, let's sort this out and do X, Y, Z, and be very practical and busy. And I think this is really amazing, actually, the way it's bringing out all the different. You said earlier, Robert, about how is it coming up with the question of what's the right way to grieve. I think maybe one thing it's showing is that there is no one right way to grieve. There's lots of different ways to grieve. We keep seeing different aspects of it in the different characters, and also within the characters, the way they change from one mood to another, and I think that's an important part of it.
It's kind of I can't remember who it is now, but there's some sort of early modern painters who just get called the realist and that sort of thing, and it is kind of like that, isn't it? It's this kind of all of this incredible sort of Christian art in the visual arts, which is so rooted in actually knowing how the light falls on a dead body in a certain way, and it's an experience of life that, well, here and now in Lancaster anyway, there's not too much of that about, and you really have to kind of cock your ear and listen to kind of spot it, as it were, sometimes. But absolutely, I agree with Sarah. I think it works on that level, I think, as letting the light fall on something, and a very careful observer.
And we've got this awkward moment coming as well, because Maudlyn, first saying, handle him tenderly, and then hurry up because the Virgin Mary's coming. Because they're halfway through the job, and she's coming at exactly the wrong time for them. And we now have another variation, perhaps, coming up next. So, enter Mary, Virgin and Mother, come then saying,
"Oh, my dear son Jesus! Oh, my dear son Jesus!"
Good Mary, sweet cousin, mourn ye not thus. Ye see how stands the case.
Alas, she comes. Oh, what remedy! Good Joseph, comfort her steadfastly, that virgin so full of womb.
And Mary says, and after speaking, will fall in a swoon or similar. We shall see.
Stand still, friends! Haste she not so! Have ye no fear of me? Let me help to take my dear son down!
Oh, lo, I was sure she would fall into a swoon. Her on every side is pity.
Oh, Maudlyn, revive her again. Oh, this woman's heart is plunged with pain. Her sorrow she cannot cease.
Ah, dear lady, wherefore and why fare ye on this wise? Will ye here die? Leave off this heaviness. Ye promised me ye would not do thus.
Speak, lady, speak for the love of Jesus, your sweet son, my master here.
Maudlyn, your master so dear.
Most meek mother, be now of
Oh,
good
good cheer.
Wipe away that runs out so fast. From your remembrance, raise out at the last of his passion the cruelty.
Take comfort, Mary. This wailing helps nothing. Your dear son we will to his sepulchre bring, whilst is all our duty.
God reward you of your tenderness. I shall assist you with all humbleness. But yet, ere he depart, suffer me my mind for to break. Howbeit full scantly may I speak for faint and feeble heart. Oh, cousin John, what shall I say? Whosoever so doleful a day, so sorrowful a time as this woeful mother's sorrow, who can it express to see her own child slain with cruelness? Mine own sweet son, your wounds I would kiss. Oh, Gabriel, of great joy did ye tell in your first salutation. Ye said the Holy Ghost should come in me, and I should conceive a child in virginity for mankind's salutation. And ye said truth, right well I know, but ye told me not my son should die. Nay, yet the thought and care of his bitter passion which he suffered now. Oh, old Simeon, full sooth you said, to speak you would not spare. Ye said, the sore of sorrow should enter my heart, yea, just Simeon, now I felt it not, with most deadly pain. Was there never mother that felt so sore? Who is John? I feel it always more and more. Help now, Maudlyn.
And she swoons again.
Meek mother and maid, leave your lamentation. Ye swoon still on apace with deadly suspiration. Ye mar yourself and us.
Ye should leave off your painful affliction, calling to your mind his resurrection, which shall be so glorious. This knew ye, and that best.
I know it well, or else in rest my heart should never be. I might not leave, nor endure 1 minute, but I am sure the third day rise shall he. Yet having remembrance the great cruelty and fell vengeance of the Jews so unkind, which thus wickedly had betrayed God's Son, born of me, a maid, most sorrowful in my mind. Oh, Judas, why didst thou betray my son, thy master? What can thou say thyself for till excuse of his tender mercy, full charity? Chose he not thee on his 12 to be? He would not thee refuse. Called not he thee to his supper and last refection? Couldst thou not put on thy poison and infection, save thus only unto thy master to be so unkind? Was his tender goodness out of thy mind so unnaturally? Gave he not to thee his body in memorial, and also in remembrance perpetual at his supper there? He that was so comely and fair to behold? How durst thou, cruel heart, to be so bold to cause him die thus here? By thy treason my son here is slain, my sweetest son. How should I refrain this bloody body to behold?
Dear Mary, get ye hence. We shall bury him with all reverence. Lie him in the mould. Hence, John, now I desire.
Come on, sweet lady, you require. I shall give you attendance.
One of you women, bear her company.
I shall wait on her. Go we hence, Mary. Put all this from your remembrance.
What mean you, friends? What is your mind? Towards me be not so unkind. His mother am not I. Would you have the mother depart him from, to leave him the... Oh, I will not so, but bide and sit him by. Therefore, good Joseph, be content.
Mary, for a good consent, we would not have you here.
You renew more sorrow in me.
Nay, good lady, that were pity.
Then let me abide him near. John, why speak ye not for my comfort? My dear son bade me to you resort, and alway on you call. You know well, here is my treasure, whom I love best, whom all my pleasure is, and ever shall be shall. Here is my liking and all my love. Why would you then me hence remove? I pray you heartily cease. Depart I may not, but by force constrained. Remembering departing, alas, my heart is pained more than I may express. Now, dear sweet cousin, I pray you, mine own dear love, which on Thursday, of his grace special, of his loving mind and tenderness, and a very inward kindness, at supper amongst you all, he admitted you friendly for to rest and sleep on his holy godly breast, for a special prerogative, because of your virginity and cleanness. Dear cousin, increase not mine heaviness, if ye desire my life. But good friends, here entreat not ye, but be content and suffer me once yet for to hold here in this place and in my arms, for to embrace this body which now is cold. This bloody body wounded so sore of my sweet son. John, I ask no more.
Lady, if ye will have moderation of your most sorrowful lamentation, do as ye list in this case.
John, I shall do as you think good. Gentle Joseph, let me sit under your rood and hold my son a space.
Let us suffer the mother to complain, her son's death in very certain, till ease her and content.
Yea, so shall our sorrowful heart always to suffer smart. We can but repent.
And we're just going to pause there, which for anyone who's read ahead, you'll know why. We've gone from anger into bargaining there in elements. I don't want to necessarily do this in psychological parlance, but there was a little bit of that in that of again, it's how everyone's reacting to Mary as well, and reacting to her grief as well as a different thing, and how they're John's obviously entered with her. There's no stage direction indicating that, but he's obviously come on with her, and everybody's sort of negotiating what happens next. It's a lot still, and there's still a lot more to come. Thoughts?
Well, it's that thing, isn't it? She's the she's the nightmare at the funeral, because her grief is just so extravagant and so huge, and it's like everyone else in the room is like, oh my God, she's basically saying everything, she's expressing everything that I'm feeling, and I don't want to give way to it, and just shut her up, it's too much.
At this stage, she's the Mater Dolorosa. Grief and sorrow is what she, that's her lot right now. And yeah, I guess the challenge performing it is to find the degrees, the changes, the shades of gray.
Because there is some comedy to this. It's a dark comedy of their reactions to her entrance and how they try to navigate that. And yeah, I mean, we should also point out it's the Son of God. So I think and it is her son. She does have a fair amount of license here. I think so. I see Georgia first, I think.
Yeah, going back to the comedy, I did think it's kind of perhaps almost just there, like it's not funny, obviously, but like there to sort of cast into more relief the depth of their grief, in that they're busy grieving or trying not to kind of, especially in Joseph's case, they're trying not to let out how much it really might impact, or is letting it out in the anger stage, and then they hear that his mother's coming. They're like, oh God, someone hold the feet, because suddenly they have to be in that practical stage, because otherwise, they'll make it even worse. I don't know. I wonder how, and this goes back to how it would be staged back in the day. I wonder whether people would have laughed at that moment and the practicality out in a sort of sense of grief sense, in a kind of but it's not funny, or whether it would have been not staged because of that, and they wouldn't want to have the getting the body down accidentally become funny. It's really interesting to think whether it was.
Alan, I saw a hand up a little earlier. Yes.
Yes, and the thought I got was that the Virgin's grief, I think, is easier to take in this, as opposed to Maudlyn's, who did seem to go on for considerably longer. And I think that was what sparked Joseph's reaction of, for goodness sake, madam, you've had 4 pages of this, move on. There is more to say on that in a moment. It is interesting how Mary seems just more angry at the opening as well. It is a different kind of reaction. There's some. It's a different energy and a different tenor. Stephen.
Well, yeah, just to support that, really. You kind of thought with Mary Magdalene, okay, that's it. You cannot top that. And then you think, oh, wait a minute, this guy's got a mother who's going to show up. So I again, it's carefully layered, isn't it? The reason I put my hand up was, back to the comedy point, there's this very famous sort of football image of Gaza crying his eyes out and Gary Lineker turning to the football manager going, can you have a word? And if anyone's ever seen that. And I sort of got that in my head as Joseph, it's kind of, John, have a word.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, or rescue me from the drunk person at the disco sort of thing. You're trying to get your mates to sort of move this person around,
and also the way they call on the women as well, like, can you come and sort her out? Because this is way beyond my scope, kind of thing. Like, get Mary in, quick.
Not our job.
The final very quick point I'll say is all of this has been storyboarded before, in terms of visual images and in terms of other encounters. So it's, the kind of bones of this, and perhaps even some of the physicality, people will have come across before, and possibly even in the church, and what we know about the sort of pre-Reformation, the amount of paintings that there were and so forth. So this visually is something that people have already got, and it's interesting to again think of this as a sort of flesh on those bones, as it were.
Okay, let's move on. So following on from the question of how long a speech of grief can we take? Go Virgin Mary.
Oh, you are kidding.
Seriously?
Right. Okay.
Good luck with this.
I just scrolled through and I just couldn't find the end of it. So
yes, for the listeners at home, it's quite long.
Just a technical note before we start. When I was keening there, I pushed my laptop back. Was it still too loud?
It's not so much loudness. It's just if you do a sustained note, then the software doesn't like it, and it just cuts you out.
Okay.
So we're sort of kind of things,
Yeah,
it will just disappear.
Okay.
But I don't recall it being too loud. Did anyone else feel it was? No, felt okay.
Right.
Hunt for the layers, hunt for the different tones, because
Yeah.
you can't stick on one.
Oh, sisters, Maudlyn, Cleophas, and Jacobi, see how pitiful my son doth lie here in my arms, dead. What earthly mother may refrain to see her son thus cruelly slain? Oh, my heart is heavy as lead. Who shall give me water sufficient and of distilling tears abundance, that I may weep my fill with heart relent, after the quantity of sorrowful remembrance, for his sake that made us all, which now lies in my lap. Of me, a maid by grace special, he pleased to be born and sucked by pack. He shrank not for to shew the shape of very man at his circumcision, and there shed his blood for man's hap. Also at my purification of him I made fair oblation, which to his father was most pleasing. For fear then of Herod's persecution unto Egypt past, I fled with him. His grace me guided in everything. And now he is dead. That changes my cheer. Never child to mother so loving. Who that cannot weep at me may leer. It was never death so cruel as this to slew the giver of all grace. Son, suffer me your wounds to kiss, and your holy blood spilt in this place, dear son. Many have stained your face so freely to behold. Thick, bloody drops run down apace, spacious as former, the prophet taught. But alas, your torment so manifold has abated your visage so glorious. Cruel Jews, what made you so bold to commit this crime most ungracious, which to yourself is most noyous? Now shall all the cursings of your law upon you fall most mischievous, and be known of vagabonds over all. He and I come both of your kin, and that ye kiss uncourteously. Ye come to fordo your sin, but ye forsake him frowardly. Who cannot weep, come sit me by, to see him that reigned in bliss in heaven with his Father gloriously, thus to be slain in all guiltless. Oh, son, in your hands are holes wide, and your feet so tender were. A great wound in your blessed side, full deeply driven with a sharp spear. Your body is beat and bruised here. On every side no place is free. Needs must I weep with heavy cheer. Who cannot weep, come learn with me, and behold your Lord, mine own dear son, thus dolefully dealt with, as ye see. But see how his head with thorns is thrown. See how he nailed was till a tree. His sinews and veins, drawn so straitly, are broken sunder by pains ungood. Who cannot weep, come learn at me, and behold him here that hang on rood. See all about the bloody streams. Oh man, this suffered he for thee. See so many fell and bitter pains. This land shed his blood in full plenty. Who cannot weep, come learn at me. See all his friends is from him fled. All is but blood, so beat was he. For the sole of his foot unto the head. Oh, sweet child, it was nothing meet. Save your sufferance. He had no peer. To let Judas kiss these lips sweet, to suffer a traitor to come so near, to betray his master, mildest of cheer. Oh, my sweet child, now suffer ye, me, your mother, to kiss you here. You cannot weep. Come learn at me. To kiss, and sweetly you embrace, and in my arms hold. To hold, and look upon your blessed face. Your face most gracious to behold so comely, ever I would still with you be, still with you to lie in mould. Who cannot weep, come learn at me. My will is to die, I would not live. Live, how should I? Since dead are ye, my life for ye. Naught can me grieve, so that I may in your presence be. Me, your woeful mother, here may ye see. You see my deadly sorrow and pain. You cannot weep. Come learn of me. To see so meek a lamb here slain, slain of men that no mercy had. Had they no mercy, I report me. See, to see this bloody body, is not your heart sad? Sad and sorrowful, have ye no pity? Pity and compassion to see this cruelty? Cruelty, unkindness. Oh, man most unkind, ye cannot weep, come learn at me. Keeping this crucifix still in your mind, when you were born of me, made mild. I sang the lay to bring you on sleep. Now is my song, alas, alas, my child. Now may I wail, wring my hand and weep. Who shall be my comfort? Who shall me keep? Save at your departing you signed to me John, your cousin, most virtuous and thief. Who cannot weep, come and learn at me. Oh, dearest child, what fault have ye done? What was your trespass? I would know it fain. Wherefore your blessed blood is forced forth to run, have murdered any person or any man slain, that your own people thus to you does endign. Nay, ye never did offence. Never spot of sin in your clear conscience. And notwithstanding their fell indignation, only of goodwill and inward charity, also for love and man's salvation, ye have suffered all this of your humility, of your large mercy. Great was the quantity, great was the multitude of your merits all. Thus for man's sake to taste the bitter gall. Son, help your mother in this woeful smart. Comfort your woeful mother that never was unkind. In your conception ye rejoyed my heart. But now of deadly woe so great cause I find, that the joy of my Helsing is passed from my mind. But suffer me to hold you here on my lap, which sometime gave you milk of my pap. Oh, sweet, sweetest child, woe be unto me, an almost woeful woman, your own mother, lo. Who shall grant it me with you for to do? The son is dead. What shall the mother do? Where shall she resort? Whither shall she go? Yet suffer me to hold you a while in my lap, which sometime gave you milk of my pap. Cruel death, no longer thou me spare. To me thou were welcome and also acceptable. Oppress me down at once. Of thee I have no care. Oh, my son, my saviour, my joy most comfortable, suffer me to die with you most merciful. Or at least let me hold you a while in my lap, which sometimes gave you be milk of my pap. Wicked people without mercy or pity, why do you not crucify and hang me on the cross? Spare not your nails, spare not your cruelty. You cannot make me to run in greater loss than to lose my son that to me was so dear. Why slew you not the mother, which is present here? Dear son, if the Jews yet will not slew me. Your goodness, your grace, I beseech and pray, so call me to your mercy with your benignity. To your meek suitors ye never said yet nay. Then may ye not your mother in this cause delay? The mother with the child desires for to rest. Remember mine own son that ye sucked at my breast. Remember when your flesh was soft as tender silk. With the gross meats then you I would not feed, gave you the liquor of a maiden's milk. Till Egypt in mine arms softly did I you lead. But your smiling countenance I ask none other meed, than to be content that I with you may rest. Remember, my dear son, that ye sucked my breast. At your nativity, remember, my dear son, what vessel I broached to your noble grace. Was there never mother that broached such a one? And my virgin paps milk ran out apace. To your godly power nature gave a place. Ye sucked a maiden's milk, and so did never none, nor hereafter shall save yourself alone. When you sucked my breast, your body was whole and sound. Alas, in every place now I see many wounds. Now help me, sweet Maudlyn, for I fall to be ground, and woeful Mary, help now, good John.
And she again swoons.
Then, good sweet lady, leave your great moan.
Ah, oh, Maudlyn, I devise ye nothing to this blessed body for to give praising. Some dolorous ditty express now ye, in the due honour of this image of pity.
To do your bidding, lady, I be right fain, but yet, good lady, your tears ye refrain.
Stephen, you're muted.
Joseph, yes.
Now, Mary, deliver that blessed body to us.
Will ye take from me mine own son Jesus?
Good lady, suffer us to bring him to his grave.
Sweet friends, suffer me more respite to have. Have compassion of me, friends, let thou pray. So hastily from me, take him not away. If to his sepulchre needs ye will him bear, bury me, his mother, with mine own son here. When he was living, to leave I desired. Now suddenly he is dead, all my joy is expired. Therefore lay the mother in grave with the child.
Mary, mother and maiden most mild, order yourself as reason doth require.
Come on, let's bury this body that is here.
Oh, now mine heart is in a mortal dread. Alas, shall I not keep him, neither quick ne dead? Is there no remedy? Yet, Joseph, again the cloth ye unfold, that his gracious visage I may once behold. I pray you entirely.
Peace, good Mary. You've had all your will.
Alas, this departing my tender heart doth kill. Good cousin John, speak a word for me.
Be content, sweet Mary, for it may not be.
Oh, toward me be very cruel, yet let me bid once mine own son farewell, yet may it not deny. No, farewell, only joy of all my heart and mind. Farewell, the dearest redemption of mankind, suffered most bitterly.
Come on, good Mary, come.
Some of you women bear her company.
We shall give her attendance faithfully with humble reverence.
And they exit.
Now, his grave, let us lie him down. And then resort we again to the town to hear what men will say. Maudlyn, you must hence depart.
Yea, and that with a sorrowful heart, mourning night and day. Farewell, sweet lamb. Farewell, most innocent. Wretched Maudlyn, with most hearty intent, commends her to your grace. Farewell, dear master. Farewell, dearest lord. With your great mercy ye shall the world record, hereafter in ill place. Some precious balms I will go buy, till anoint and honour this blessed body, as it is my duty is. Fair Joseph and good Nicodemus, I commend you to the keeping of Jesus. He will quite thou all this.
Well, Maudlyn, to yourself comfort take. Of this blessed burial, let us an end make.
And possibly at this point the actual burial occurs.
Here now is he graved, and here lies he, which for love of man, of his charity, suffered bitter passion. Great comfort it is unto us all that the third day arise he shall, in the most glorious fashion. Time draweth fast, and approaches near. Shortly, I trust, some good tiding to hear. Devout Nicodemus, depart we as now.
Gladly, friend Joseph, I will go with you.
And thus here ends the most holy burial of the body of Jesus Christ, or Christ Jesus. And thus ends indeed the play. Well done, Sarah.
Hey!
Well done, dear.
I have got to start reading ahead before I do these things.
Yeah, when people say, oh, actors, they're only interested, getting big parts and big speeches. But, when you actually hand an actor a speech like that, you just the blood washes from there.
Oh God, yeah. Especially when you're sight reading it, because you just don't know where it's going to go next, and it's like, oh no.
Is this why directors are prescribed full cricket gear?
It's a really interesting speech. I mean, it's got those repeated passages. It's got the bits where the tail end of a line, the thought is then picked up again in the next, which feels so dynamic. I mean, there is a lot of it, but then that's the point, and it is that element of just the excess of it, and it's the fact that everybody is still standing there while she's doing this, holding the body, and it's fascinating. Thoughts from the room. Now we've reached the end. Liza's first in.
I wondered while I was reading through that speech, again, full admiration to Sarah for the delivery. I wondered whether we might not have multiple versions of the same speech, or at any rate additions. In a lot of the religious plays that have come down to us, there have been additions, there have been alterations, and the first part of the speech seemed kind of straightforward, and then like the last half of it seemed to have been done by someone with kind of a lactation fetish.
Yes, absolutely.
And
I thought that as I was reading it.
Yeah, and it's sort of a parallel to how obsessed they are with Christ's blood, but it's also kind of, yeah.
I mean, is that a thing? Is that a thing in kind of liturgical plays? I mean, is there this complete dwelling?
I've seen it mentioned, but I haven't seen it dwelt on to quite that extent before.
Yeah.
Robert, you may have other.
I really haven't come across anything like this myself. To this.
In the visual arts, there is something though, which is to really, really draw that visual parallel. I think sort of Jesus is sort of sitting up like that, sort of flopped, face up, and Mary is kind of holding him, and there's a kind of explicit visual parallel there between the start of his life and the end of his life.
And
that was my reading of the fetish, which I gave up counting them, and it made me wonder about whether again this sort of storyboarding idea that people, it's an association that people would be expecting because they've sort of seen lots of mother and child stuff, lots of startup life stuff.
And just going back to Liza's point, I mean, it's interesting. The repetition seems built in. I mean, that's that was the thing when I first read it. I was thinking the same, and but actually the excess and never-endingness to it seems deliberate. Though that we can always take that on board. Alan, I've seen lots of hands all over the place. Alan first.
Yeah, I mean, the piece it reminded me of was very much more modern. The Beckett's Not I, with that sort of looping structure. And I just wonder whether it was an influence on him, coming out of an Irish tradition, Catholic tradition, where
we've lost your sounds, Alan.
Really?
If you're still talking?
No, I'd finished.
Oh, you'd finished. Okay, that's okay.
It's parallels with Not I. That's really good.
Yeah. There is as well, several languages. So.
Yeah.
There is. I should say I went with a bit of a compromise with one of the words in there. So I went with sucked, and I sort of wish I hadn't. It's somewhere between suckled and sucked, because it's suckit. And I was sort of trying to think, is there a good modernization? I think the answer is no. I will actually return the original because I think that it just sounds wrong to the modern ear. Anyway, Sarah.
Just on the lactation thing before we move on, which hopefully we will, I was going to say that actually in art, I don't know if there are any art historians in the room, but I'm quite into my medieval art, and there is a whole subset of medieval art that is devoted to the lactating Mary. And then like Stephen was saying, the parallels with then the Pieta, the weeping Mary at the end of his life and her at the beginning. But there is this whole subsection of medieval art which is quite surprising, some of it, when you see it, because you do think, well, was this actually a kind of niche section of art history? The artists were commissioned to create these paintings for particular patrons who just basically wanted an excuse, because they had a bit of a breast fetish or whatever. But it is actually, in art at least, it is definitely a thing that exists, and it's a whole official subsection of medieval.
It's interesting.
Iconography.
Sorry, go, Liza.
It's true, and one of the things that a lot of Catholic clergy were always having to crack down on was worship of Mary, in her own right. And so, the whole thing with bodily fluids redeeming people, a lot of what was applied to Christ's blood was also applied to that aspect of her.
And it's the thing is, she's got possession of the body throughout the whole thing. I mean, going back to Stephen's, the whole clutching the body image, which survives into other drama. I mean, we've got it in Tragedy of Antony with Cleopatra clinging on to Antony for almost the entire Act 5. So it's an image that survives into secularization in a very different context. But it's the fact that Mary has the possession of the body, and they're also saying, well, if you could just move away from the thing, and we'll just start covering the body in its cloth, and then she runs back and opens it up again. There's a whole aspect of action here, and I have thoughts about how what to do with that as best practice. Stephen.
Well, just very quickly to the point that you made, Rob, which was about repetition. I did some editing years and years ago, and you really can't tell whether somebody is repeating themselves because they're upset and incoherent in that sense, or whether you should be looking at multiple versions. I had this a couple of times with Jack Straw, and I couldn't make my mind up in the end what was going on, so I left it.
Yeah.
What I got from the repetition was a heavy callback to medieval lyric poetry, and I wondered if some sections of that speech might not have been meant to be sung, especially since afterwards she's like, "Oh, Maudlyn, why do ye devise nothing?" Which might indicate either poetry, formal poetry, or possibly song. She asks for a ditty.
True.
Yeah, no, I like the idea of working this with some music and seeing where that goes. Very much, Georgia. You didn't get that much dialogue, I'm afraid. I didn't think this through.
That's not mine.
I do apologize. Did I deprive you of being John by just parachuting in?
Well, technically, I was John.
Okay.
It was.
Well,
just,
I feel much less bad about depriving you.
I was quite glad, but I didn't. The thing is, I do these things randomly, and I don't always actually check how many words people are actually getting. So I apologise on that front. It wasn't deliberate. So your thoughts about the? We can move now into overall of the whole piece rather than just the end now. But wherever you'd like to leap in.
Well, something I found interesting was like I know about the burial and resurrection and everything like that, but having absolutely no in-depth religious knowledge of any religion is actually very interesting. Not what I expected, as in terms of its presentation of very nuanced stages of grief, that actually felt very psychologically accessible as a modern and non-religious person, which really surprised me. And also the metaphysical aspect. I don't know if that is just common in liturgical plays. I just didn't know, or it does stand out from some other early modern work that I've read in it kind of very visceral.
It does really work as something that yes, it's got various linguistic things that are sort of pushing it back into a more medieval tradition, but it actually flows in a very modern way, and I think it's beautifully done. Yes, it is excessive, but that's sort of the point, and I think it just about gets away with it. Again, the physical aspect, but then also there's another aspect which, in my mind, I'm thinking about this as, what does one do with a text like this? I really feel this would make a brilliant audio piece. Very rarely do I go, actually, these things always work as audio, or long speeches work as audio. But this, I actually hear it as the sound design of people moving the body, picking, the sound of fabric moving, and the soundscape around it, rather than worrying about the imagery of it, because the imagery actually is either going to be so horrific or so pathetic, that actually thinking about it as sound really appeals. And also the fact that you could, as a podcast rather than as broadcast radio, what we could do is really luxuriant in some of those pauses and actually just weeping and the thing of getting him down, laying him out, the sounds of that, and actually letting that be excessively long at times, and see how that goes. Georgia.
No, sorry, I was just going to say that the imagery of it lends itself. Using the actors, both for the actors and the audience, there's so much imaginary force going on. You don't need it, but you can hear those sort of gentle sounds and like the somber pause to contain the action. It actually listened. None of it felt in the long speech. They didn't decrease the pace or anything. It felt like it was written for audio. Maybe it wasn't more of a storytelling thing originally. I'm not sure.
Alan, I saw a hand.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, I think the audio idea does work, because most of the visuals are very, very well described in the text. And to actually try and stage those, I think you're going to either end up spending a fortune on trying to recreate them, or they're going to be clack. Also struck me that we got a very, very good précis of pretty well the whole of the New Testament up to the point of the crucifixion in a relatively short space. And also, I know we've commented on the sort of the anti-Semitic trope in there, but there is the explicit couplet in there about when the Virgin Mary is actually saying we were both Jews, which is something that many latter-day Christians seem to forget. The other one, on a sort of completely random note, is on the question of the date. There is an appropriateness to this debate, given the fact that Joseph Aramathia was rumoured to have gone to Glastonbury, given the anniversary weekend this weekend.
Yes, it's yeah, and thankfully the few anti-Semitic lines are very excisable. I mean, it's not like they go on an excessive diatribe on that, which is thankful. I think I'm thankful for that. Stephen, you have a pensive thought.
Just the Glastonbury thing. I mean, it's the Glastonbury thorn, isn't it? Supposedly.
Yes.
But I seem to remember Glastonbury was it was either the second or third richest house before the Reformation as well. So the associations with Glastonbury, just because of Glastonbury would have had a fair amount of sort of social and financial clout, might well have been at work here. I think that's a really interesting point.
Yeah, I'm not sure which monastic order were in charge there.
Look it up.
Yeah, that's one for research.
And they're all connected to one another, aren't they, as well, I guess? So,
yeah. Well, they were connected, but also there was rivalry between the various colours and flavours.
Yeah, we're very much into final thoughts now. So overall, and thoughts about possibly, yes, I've got my audio idea, but maybe people have other ideas. Maybe we would like to do the logistics of the body. Sascha, would you like to throw in any final thoughts about this play?
I was very moved by the whole thing, I have to say. I know I didn't say much at all throughout the whole thing, but yeah, it's again, it gives you a lot of food for thought. And having performed in a mystery play, in a couple of mystery plays in the past, and actually seeing something actually written in this way was very, very moving. And put it this way, I felt like I was channeling Maudlyn there. I really felt like I was there. So if you do it, the audio idea I think would work really, really well. And there's a lot of scope, I think, with all characters that you can actually do. Again, if you do it, would love to be involved. Really, really good piece.
No, I think it's very scalable. It's very doable. It just packs such a punch. It genuinely does pack a punch. Liza, final thought.
Yeah, that what religious drama does that simply Bible readings in church can't do is it makes the characters from these stories into human beings. And medieval towns and cities, by our standards, were quite small. It turns into people saying these things, and spoken for an audience of people, pretty much every one of whom will have either lost children, lost brothers, lost sisters. Life was a lot more fragile in those days, and people did just die. It sounds very simplistic to say that, but grief is... So it takes these things that, you were interested... That you would normally hear a priest who may or may not have been a particularly good reader reading about every week. It takes these things and it makes them personal. It takes the personages from these stories, makes them into human beings relating to one another, supporting one another in loss. So, and there are parts where our modern eye is like, isn't this grief a little too much? And you know, if I were staging this, I might well cut the second half of Mary's speech. I might cut from "my darling son" onwards and just keep and end it with "come learn of me." But yeah. Anyway, people, grieving people.
Mm. I don't know if I would cut. I'd probably do some more salami edits to that speech. I know it seems a bit fetishistic, but I do think some of that stuff really does actually work. It's just it's just yeah, it's possibly excessive, but that's fine. Georgia, any final thoughts? Well, you can say no. Remember, it's fine.
No, I mean, not really. I think it's all been covered now.
Lovely. Alan, final thought?
Yeah, not much to add. One request: can you please find the part to play of this, the resurrection one, because I think it would be interesting to look at that with this still recently fresh in the memory.
Oh, I mean, if we've got the numbers, I'm quite happy to just say we'll do it next week. It's very much in my mind. I've got an absolute ton of work to turn it into a readable text, but it's entirely doable.
Well, standard offer if you need help.
Yeah, well, it's the problem is I've only got one physical working copy I can't to work from, so it's very much it's a tricky beast. Stephen, final thought?
I've said everything, I think. No.
Yeah, I think I've covered everyone then.
You haven't covered me.
Have I not? Oh, maybe I came to you before we went into formal final thoughts. Okay, final thought.
I love the audio idea. I think it would work really well. And one of the reasons I think it would work really well is because it actually cuts across like Christian. It's not just a Christian text. It's I mean, obviously it is, but it's a meditation on grief. And humans in general have a tendency to try and avoid grief wherever possible. But actually, one thing that struck me while I was listening to you all with your thoughts was I just had a flashback to when Princess Diana died. And do you remember there was that great big outpouring of public grief?
Yeah.
And at the time we were all thinking, what is all this about? But it was basically like that event became a sort of focus for everybody's grief that they had in their lives and that they'd been storing up and maybe trying to avoid expressing. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, we have this national reason now why we can grieve, and boom, it all came out. And this to me is like, I mean, I can imagine that when this was played, what Liza said about people used to die, well, they did. There would have been probably every wife or mother in the congregation, if it was done in a church, would have lost a child, or most of them would have lost a child. So it's like you can really see how this was about taking what is effectively part of the New Testament, but actually making it about the grief and making it as a conduit for people to express their grief and deal with their grief. So I think as a meditation on grief, it cuts right across every religion and every kind of culture, and even though it's so rooted in the New Testament. One other thing I just wanted to say, this is a technical thing. I noticed there's a word that you've got in bold, "theep," in Mary's speech. I think that should actually be "yeep," because it's a yoch, not a thorn.
Yeah, and similarly in that speech, there's a couple of places where you've put "be," which I'm pretty sure is "the," and you may have transcribed, or the editor may have transcribed a thorn to a "be."
Yeah. So, but I can send you a note about that. Rob, you're muted.
Yes. I've basically been using this as a session to reading along with the original, so that I can correct as I go. So hopefully I've caught most of those as we go along. Yeah, I with the yeep, I couldn't find a yeep or any of the other options. It's not always as it's not necessarily actually what was written in the brackets might not be accurate either. So,
Okay.
but it could be Yeep. It could indeed. But there are various little things like that, which frankly I just need to find a choice in production. Stephen, I saw a hand.
Well, it was just Sarah's point. Pregnancy is incredibly dangerous as well. That's the other thing. You know, a lot of people die. So you know, there's this kind of extra layer. Not only, you know, the mothers have been in that situation themselves, but they will have put their own lives at risk in a sense, or maybe not voluntarily, but they will have had. You know, it's an ordeal that, again, you know, here in Lancaster now we can kind of forget about. So a particularly powerfully gendered point, I think.
So a play very much about grief, but as we've just mentioned, there is a second play, which of course is about resurrection and life. So there is a sense of the excesses of this are perhaps there to build to a payoff with the following play, which hopefully we'll be able to look at very, very soon, depending on numbers and availabilities. I'd just like to thank all the readers today. This has been a wonderful session. Thank you all very much, and goodbye.
Bye-bye.